Hello everyone, my name is Moji. You're watching a Bitcoin bubble news channel. This means that the US has gone to war and killed millions of people to protect the petrodollar system, which is what keeps the dollar as the world's main currency. Sometimes, the US government, or rather the US power, is ready to do anything to protect the dollar. The idea that they would do nothing and let the dollarization happen without making a plan is crazy. Already in the works, even though they knew they couldn't keep this up forever, and that the world would eventually move on from oil. It's important to remember that these people have been very serious and played very dirty. Recent rumors about the petrodollar deal between the US and Saudi Arabia have caused a lot of people to question whether or not it is real. Some news stories say the deal is over, but others say these stories aren't true. Some people even think that such a deal may not have existed at all, even though Saudi Arabia still buys and sells most of its oil in US dollars. Chinese social media posts in June spread the rumor that Riyadh had ended the petrodollar deal, which was a deal between Riyadh and Washington that had been in place for 50 years. Petrodollars are US dollars that oil exporting countries get from selling crude oil. The word petrodollars became popular in the mid-1970s. The first petrodollars were used in 1974, when the United States was having an oil problem. OPEC put sanctions on the US because it backed Israel in the Yom Kippur War. This caused oil prices to skyrocket and a need for a steady oil supply. It was because of this that the US and Saudi Arabia agreed to deal with oil in dollars. Whitney Webb, founder of Unlimited Hangout, talks about the problem by pointing out how strong the US dollar system is and how it keeps the value of goods bought around the world even though prices are going up in the US. This is clear because countries like Argentina are switching to stablecoins because their currencies are getting weaker. Webb doesn't think that the possible fall of the petrodollar system is a chance event, but rather a planned change that will have big effects. In the past, the US has fought hard to keep the dollar's position as the world's reserve currency, even going to war in 2003 to invade Iraq and intervened in Libya in 2011. Webb says that because of this past, the US will probably fight to keep the petrodollar as the world's main currency as it moves away from oil. To do this, it might use new financial systems and digital currencies to keep its economic power. You could say that Mohammed bin Salman has been moving away from the dollar for a while now, which is why Saudi Arabia is getting rid of the petrodollar a long time before that public announcement. When he took office, his main goal was to move Saudi Arabia's economy away from oil. He unveiled his Vision 2030 plan, in which he hinted that he wanted to move Saudi Arabia away from oil and make it a star in the fourth industrial revolution, which includes fintech. Big players in the oil business in the Middle East, like those in the United Arab Emirates, have also been seen to do pretty much the same thing. So I think it's something that has been planned for a while. Interesting fact, MBS was close to Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, as soon as he took office and while Trump was president. We know this because of emails that have since been made public that show Kushner supporting the idea of stable coins. Stable US dollar coin. He actually shared an interesting blog post by Sam Altman about the USD coin with Steve Mnuchin from the Treasury Department. This was before Circle started USDC, but it's still interesting. So it's possible that these talks happened a long time ago and aren't as new as the headlines make it seem. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Just remember that the US has gone to war and killed millions of people to protect the petrodollar system, which is how the dollar has been kept as the world's reserve currency. One of the main reasons, though there are probably others, was that Saddam Hussein had started selling oil in euros instead of dollars not long before the invasion and made a lot more money. He did this to show other OPEC members that they could also make more money by selling oil in currencies other than dollars. There was also the case of Libya in 2011. Gaddafi was trying to switch to a currency backed by gold called the dinar and was selling it to African countries. A lot of them either used dollars or French money. That's why the US and France basically led that regime change operation, which had terrible results for Libya. It went from being the safest country in Africa to the most dangerous. And it's been used as an example or reason for why immigration got so out of hand in Europe after that. In some situations, the US government, or rather the US power, is ready to do anything to protect the dollar. They knew they couldn't keep this up forever, and that the world would eventually move away from oil, so the idea that they would just sit back and let dollarization happen without having some kind of plan in place was crazy. I believe it's important to remember that these people have been very serious, played very hard, and made things. It's causing crazy instability to keep the dollar as the world's reserve currency because it gives the US a lot of benefits, and I think they want to keep those benefits. In the big picture, countries like Argentina, Lebanon, and many others around the world have been targets of economic warfare for a long time. This is very clear in Argentina. Some say it started in the 1970s and 1980s. Also, when I talk about economic policy, some of Argentina's financial practices when it was a military dictatorship were completely crazy. Carlos Menem was a conservative who was in charge of Argentina in the 1990s. I thought he was poor for the country. Their economy then crashed in 2001, which again, you could say was a direct result of many of those policies, both during the regime and during Menem's presidency. After that, the IMF and all these other groups come in and try to do things. Argentina did things like debt for land swaps and debt for resources trades after its economy crashed in 2001. In fact, this has been going on for a very long time in a lot of places in Latin America, not just Argentina. It's also a grab for resources. We also talk about this in this piece and plan to do so in future reports and a book. A lot of the people I've written about, Mark has written about, and we've written about together are the engineers of that expressly. In the 1980s and 1990s, Latin America's debt was wiped out. This was done to connect Latin America to the US and more generally to many global economic interests based in the US, such as Wall Street banks. A lot of this was planned by them. So what's going on in Argentina now didn't just appear out of thin air. It's clear that Argentina's central bank is to blame. But it didn't happen by itself. Leaders chose who would run the central bank and make those decisions. Plus, Milei, who has said bad things about Argentina's central bank, put a former head of that bank in a top job.